Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video we'll be taking a look at the 9 books available for Warcry and discussing which ones you need for your game. So there's a lot of books for Warcry. I mean, we've got 9 released so far since the game came out, and it's really fun to collect all the books and all the sets that come with it, but I guess not everybody wants to do that. So, you may only want to have the books that you need to play the game, and so in this video we'll go through all the books, look at what's included in each one, what makes them different, and then hopefully that'll give you an idea as to which books you'd like to buy and whether you'd like to get them all or just pick out the ones that you think you'll need to play your Warcry games with. I've done separate review videos for each of these books where I go through in detail all the contents, and we go through right from the start of the book to the end, looking at each page. But in this video, we'll really just do an overview of each book and focus on the kind of key points, the pros and cons, and what they cover. The first book that was released is the core book, and this came in the original Warcry set, and so you can buy this separately now, and this one's £25. And for all these books, I'll put links to Element Games where you can pick them up, and there'll be affiliate links, but you'll be able to get a discount with those links, saving you up to 10 to 20%. And for every sale made through a link, I get a small commission too, and that's going to help me develop the channel. So thanks for that support, and I'll put links to all these in the description below. But the core book, you're going to get it in the original game, you're going to get it in the Catacombs set, or you can buy it separately. So if you buy this separately, this one's £25. This is the most expensive of the books. And then the next one to be released was Monsters and Mercenaries and Tome of Champions 2019. And these ones are different sizes. So the Monsters and Mercenaries is a little bit thinner than the Tome of Champions 2019. And price-wise, Monsters and Mercenaries, the RRP is 15 and the Tome of Champions 20. Then after that, we saw the Catacombs set come out, and in that set is the Catacombs book. And I don't believe you can purchase this separately at the moment, but it might come out, one day they might release this separately. But right now, I believe you can only get it in the set. Then at the end of last year, we got the Tome of Champions 2020, and then we got the Alliance supplements books. One's for the Sentinel of Order, Bringers of Death, Agents of Chaos, and Harbingers of Destruction. So this was a great release in December. We got so many Warcry sets and books released. It was really good. Price-wise, the Tome of Champions, that was 20. Sentinels of Order and Agents of Chaos are the thicker of the 4 other supplement books, and they were £20. And then the Bringers of Death and Harbingers of Destruction, they're 15, the RRP. So you can see the difference there. These are almost twice as big at 112 pages compared to 62. So quite a difference there, and that's really down to there being more warbands in the Chaos and Order factions. So with all these books then, we've pretty much got the core rulebook that we really need to play the game, and then we've got 4 supplement books, 1 for each of the alliances, and then we've got another 4 supplement books, 1 for a game, 1 for Monsters and Mercenaries, and then 2 Tome of Champions. Now let's go through each one, and we'll just discuss why each one's important, what it's going to add to your gameplay, and then you can decide which ones you'd like to pick up. So let's start with the core book. If you want to play Warcry, then you've got to have the rulebook. So the core book comes with it. Of course, you could pick things up online, watch videos and things like that, but nothing beats having the actual rulebook for the game, and there's a good chance you're going to be referring to it quite often, especially when you first start playing. So the core book's really important, and it's also got things that you need for the terrain, the different cards, and for additions that you'll play as you go through the game, like chaotic beasts and things like that. So as we look in the core book, this is really giving you everything you need to know about Warcry. This is giving you the introduction to the 8 points, and it's going through the main Chaos warbands that were released for Warcry. So these are specific to Warcry, and then it goes through the core rules and the different ways you can play the game. And it's from these core rules that all the other supplement books are built upon. And so once you know these core rules, then you can go and get the other books. So without this, you're not going to be able to use the kind of information and the additional rules that are included in those. So this is really the core book that you need to get started. And it's even going to include the ways to play open, narrative or match play. It's going to include a campaign section. So this is going to get you started on your campaigns. and go into all the rules again for how to play a campaign. And then it's going to go into background tables, going into your main Chaos warbands that were released with Warcry, and then some of the most popular factions that came out from the Age of Sigmar. So you've got Stormcast Eternals, Legions of Nagash, Gloomspite Gits, and a few others there. And again, if you want to see all the contents of this book, then check out the video I've done of that, and you can see that on my channel. But I go through a lot of the rules and everything in the videos as well. I've made videos just on the rules and different elements of the book, but this really is a must. So if you want to start playing Warcry, I'm going to just say you really need to get the core book. So this is the one that I would say is a definite buy, but let's look at all the others, and let's start with them in the order that they were published. After the core set came out, Monsters and Mercenaries was released, and now this is a great little supplement book. Again, it's only a little thin book, not many pages at all. We're looking at 64 pages plus the cover where they put the warband roster on as well. And so just a small supplement book, but this really opened up some interesting elements to the game. In the core book, the fated quests are referred to as campaign quests, but in Monsters and Mercenaries and the subsequent books, they're referred to as fated quests. And so this is where we first saw the fated quests come up, and we've also got some challenge battles included here. The campaign quests in the original core book, they were open to specific warbands with the faction rune mark, whereas the fated quests here and the challenge battles, they're pretty much open to any warband. So you can play these with whichever warband or faction that you play. And another thing it started to bring in was monsters, and although thralls are kind of included in the core book, this really expanded on it and gave us some extra ones that we could use, such as the Razor Gore, the Chaos Spawn, and the Chaos Warhounds. So this is all building on the core book, and things like the challenge battles, this was new, this is what came in. So you can play a challenge battle if you're embarked on a campaign, and the idea here is in between your convergence battles, you can pick some of these challenge battles and play with other players who are also on a campaign. So this is where the challenge battles first came into play. So this was a really great addition that added to the whole narrative and just the immersion, and really set the different scenes to kind of keep the gameplay interesting while you were playing your campaign games. We were also introduced to allies here with this Monsters and Mercenaries book, and so we've got the quest challenge battles taking up the majority, say 2/3 of the book, and then a little bit about the thralls and monsters, and we were given 8 monsters that we could actually fight against. So that was a really good introduction. You could fight against the monsters, but the allies was a really good way to bring in lots of different fighters from Age of Sigmar. And so it's got from all different factions, from chaos to death and destruction and order. It's got them all in here. And so this was really giving us access to start using miniatures from Age of Sigmar. So this book's really got a lot of interesting information that builds on the original core book. But with the books that have come out recently, and certainly after this one, this is almost now kind of not needed. So it almost made this book obsolete. There is fated quest and challenge battles that are unique, but I would say if you're looking at picking up one of the supplement books that we're going to later, so one of the kind of, or Grand Alliance books, if you want one of those, then I would say you really don't need to get the Monsters and Mercenaries book. I mean, if you're collecting, it goes without saying that you're going to probably want to get all the books. But just for gameplay, if you're going to get one of the Grand Alliance books, then you really don't need this, because the Grand Alliance books are going to include fated quests, challenge battles, thralls and monsters, heroes and allies. So this doesn't have anything about heroes, where the newer books do. So I would say this is definitely not a must buy, and this would be more if you wanted to collect and have the full collection, with some interesting challenge battles and fated quests included. So that's the Monsters and Mercenaries. Now we'll move on to the first Tome of Champions, which was the 2019 edition. So I'm hoping they're going to bring these out each year. It's kind of like an annual like we used to get when we were kids. And so it'd be really cool if we do get a Tome of Champions each year. But this first one came out in 2019, and this really expanded on all the previous things we've seen. But it introduced some really cool new ways to play and also some rules updates. So let's open it up and just go into a little bit of detail on what's going to be included in here. So here we've got a little bit more on open play and how we can kind of play around with open play terrain. So this was really expanded on the core book again. And we've got narrative play, but this time it's going a little bit further and including some of the warbands that haven't had specific campaigns designed for them. So it's got some for like Beasts of Chaos, Skaven, Disciples of Tzeentch, and things like that. As well as the faction-specific narrative, we've also got fated quests and challenge battles, just as we saw in the Monsters and Mercenary book, but again, these are going to be unique. And then we've got a new thing called Trial of Champions, and this is kind of taking Warcry into hardcore mode. So here you can actually get long-lasting injuries, players can die and things like that. So you can get, this is a really cool and interesting part of the game if you want to make it a little bit tougher for yourself while playing a campaign. Another great feature that we see that's new here are the Roman beasts, and this is introducing us to wild cave creatures and the restless dead. So this is really interesting, and we also got a lot more background tables for the different warbands and different factions. So this is really great. We're starting to get a lot more narrative now, and we're starting to get some new ways to play the game. So just like when we would play with chaotic beasts with the core book, we're getting some similar things, but now with some new models being introduced. So I think it would be really cool just to take a quick look at Trial of Champions and Roman Beasts, because these really are some great additions that are unique to the Tome of Champion books. So let's start with Trial of Champions, and this is the champion mode for when you're playing a campaign, but I kind of see it as hardcore mode. So this is like taking things to the next level and making it a lot more difficult. So now you've got like less resources, and when you recruit new fighters for your campaign, you kind of have to spend perhaps more glory points than you normally would, depending on the value of the fighter. So that's a really interesting twist. But the main thing in this is that any fallen fighters during the game, they're going to sustain lasting injuries, and this could be anything from a cracked rib to a kind of blindness in one eye, it says here. And so that's really cool. And there's a critical injuries table that you roll to see which of your fighters receive these. And then with these permanent injuries, like they're going to lose things like attack characteristics going to be reduced. They're going to be tougher, less tough. They're going to be less strong and things like that. So this is really going to influence your warband, adds to the narrative and almost the realism of it as they get injured, as they develop through the campaign. You've also got some other tables to roll on for territory, exploration, so you can get different treasures. And then you've got some more lesser artifacts. So you've got quite a lot here that you can find. And so this is a really good section that's unique to the Tome of Champions books, and I really like that. The next section is Roman Beasts, and this kind of builds on the idea of the chaotic beasts that we've got in the core book. And now we get some wild cave creatures or restless undead, and these are just going to pop up during the battle and you're going to have to fight them. So it says here, when a twist card with the wild creatures rune mark is in play, then if both players agree, they can instead use the rules in this section to dictate which wild creatures will appear on the battlefield. So this is going to give you access to more miniatures now, perhaps some that aren't even included in the Faction and Grand Alliance books. So this is really good. But it's really great for the whole narrative, where if you're like in an environment like a mausoleum and you're fighting a battle, say between Corvus Cabal and Beasts of Chaos, then you can still get some restless undead popping up out of the graves or out of the tombs, and they can like join in and make the battle even more difficult. So I think this is a really fun element, and I really like that. And so page-wise, there's only 2 pages, but this is kind of a real good feature of the Tome of Champions books. So there's 2 real good reasons that I think it's worth getting these books. And certainly if you're picking them up each year, it's fun to collect them. And just really nice kind of way of getting like an annual for your favourite game each year when it's released. These are also really great for keeping up to date with rules and things like that. So they're going to update the rules each time, in addition to the erratas that come out. You're going to get rule updates in these books too. So that's the first Tome of Champions. And the book that came out after that was the Catacombs book, and that came in the Catacombs set that was released in November last year, in 2020. This book is purely a supplement book, and it's for a specific kind of gameplay, and so you certainly don't need this. And I would say if you don't have the terrain and the boards, then you're not really going to use this at all. So you can't buy it separately from the Catacombs set, and I guess that's why you do really need all the elements that came with that Catacombs set for this to make sense. And with the original game and the core rulebook, it all takes place above ground. You're using buildings and different levels to kind of climb up, jump off and things like that, whereas Catacombs introduces us to a completely new style of gameplay. We're playing on a dungeon in the forge floor, infernal forge floor, and so it's completely different. And so you've got, instead of having buildings, you've got doors and gateways to walk through, you've got bridges, and it brings up specific rules to that dungeon. So you're playing in a completely different environment with Catacombs, and it's a completely different style of play. And it also eliminates a few abilities, but it also introduces some more. So where the Corvus Cabal would lose an ability because of the nature of this gameplay, they're going to get some specific abilities included for playing in the dungeons. So if you're interested in playing the dungeon, then I would say it's really worth getting the Catacombs set. If you've got the core set already, then perhaps you're not interested in expanding that and playing in a dungeon environment, so then you really don't need this at all. But if you came to the game late, like I didn't start this until November 2020 when Catacombs came out, then that's the set that's got some great value. It's going to give you the core book, it's going to give you the Catacombs book, you're going to get a mix of both the Catacombs terrain and then some of the terrain that came with the original Warcry core set. You're going to get 2 warbands and everything you need to play with tokens and things like that. So I think if you're coming to the game now, then it's definitely worth getting the Catacombs set, and then the value you're going to get from the different books and sets and terrain and warbands is well worth the price. So you're going to end up with this book, and it really does make the game really fun. You can go from playing a battle above ground, and then you can take the next battle underground and delve into here with some nice twists and some nice new rules. So if you've already got the core book and some terrain and the core set, then you really don't need this. This would be like an additional purchase. But if you're coming to the game new, I would definitely recommend getting the Catacombs main set so that you get this, the core book, and everything else that comes with it. The next book we got was the Tome of Champions 2020, and this expands on kind of everything we've gone through already with the previous Tome of Champions. It updates the rules, but it also introduces some new things, and I think they're really interesting. And there's a really cool thing in this book that I think makes the whole book well worth purchasing. And this one, just like the other Tome of Champions, is the retail price of £20. But don't forget there'll be links in the description where you can save up to 20% at Element Games. So in the Tome of Champions 2020, and this came out December 2020, along with pretty much the same time as the Grand Alliance books. And this introduces some new things. So as well as the kind of rules update that we expect, open play, narrative play, this narrative play focuses on Soroth Core, the Silent City. And this gives us a real in-depth look at a campaign and takes it to another level. This is amazing. I can't wait to start playing this on the channel at some point, because there's a heck of a lot going on here. It's like packed with information. So this is a really good part of the book. It takes up 22 pages, so yeah, you're going to get loads of fun and loads of narrative from this. The great thing about it is it's open to all the factions as well, so no matter which warband you play, you can play Soroth Core, and you've also got some additional narrative battles. You've got fated quests and challenge battles, and all of these are open to all the different warbands. You also see you've got Trial of Champions included here. So just as we did in the 2019 version, we've got that Trial of Champions in here too. Jumping back to the open play, where we were introduced to Triumph and Treachery in the core rulebook, which is where you can play with a number of different warbands. So I think you can have up to 4 warbands all competing at once on the battlefield. So like multiplayer game, if you like. This introduces pit fights. And this is a new twist on it, where you can have now 3 to 6 warbands. So you can have 3 to 6 players, and each warband only has 1 to 3 fighters in it, and that can be a maximum of 250 points. So this is really, as it says, it's a pit fight, so you can just take in one fighter worth 250 points and get stuck in and have like one fighter each with 6 of you all around the table and just see who comes out on top. So that's a really fun part of this book. But this isn't the best bit. The best bit for me is here under challenge battles. We've got a thing called Wildfighters, and Wildfighters introduces a kind of option where it's not designed for solo play, but it screams out solo play. The idea is you can be playing with your opponent, a friend, but you can also introduce like some Wildfighters, much like you would with the Chaotic Beast. So with the Wildfighters, they would come into the game and just appear much like the Roman beasts do with the wild cave creatures and the restless dead. But if you wanted to play solo, you could take the kind of AI mechanics from this couple of pages and then use that in your game if you're playing on your own. So I think we should look at this really, because this is a really important bit. And again, I went in depth when I did a review of this book, but I think it's worth highlighting it here because this is a really important part of this book, and I think it could be the reason to pick it up. But let's just take a look at the other things you're going to get with this. So you're going to get a lot more lesser artifacts. So we're going to get more lesser artifact tables, but this time they're going to be specific to chaos, order, death and destruction. So again, building on that narrative and giving us lots more kind of in-depth things we can bring into the game, immerse ourselves in it a bit more. Goes into a bit more detail about match play and tournaments, and also covers Roman beasts again. So that's the same as before, but again, it's just updating us with all the rules. So here we are on page 76 and 77, and it's just 2 pages. We're going to find something called Wildfighters. And now this is all about introducing new kind of wildfighters to play against while you're playing with an opponent. And it says here, in the challenge battles in this book, 2 players and their warbands join forces to battle enemies controlled by the game. These enemy fighters are referred to as wildfighters, and the following rules explain how they are used in battle. So this tells you how to muster the wildfighters, how to put them into battle groups, set them up, fight in battles with wildfighters, how you do it with allies in battle, the hero phase, the reserve phase, combat, how you activate them. But it's this behaviour table that really stood out to me. So these wildfighters, they're going to get their own specific abilities, and you're going to use this behaviour table to roll to randomly assign an ability and an action to them. So it's all based on range, so they can either be in combat range, threat range, or beyond threat range. And that's all covered here. But basically, you'd roll a dice and match it up to the range. So if you rolled a 1 and they're in combat range, they're going to do something called recuperate. So we look down at the ability and it tells us what that recuperate ability is going to mean. And then in their second action, they're going to attack. So this is really great. It's totally random. It's kind of an AI system that you can use for these wildfighters, but I think you could use it for some of the games you want to play solo as well. And I think with a little bit of experimentation and maybe adding a few little bits to it, this could be really interesting. So I'm going to do a separate video just on this as we kind of move through the campaign and playing with the Beasts of Chaos. And so once I've played a few games with this, tweaked it a bit, added some rules maybe, and trying to incorporate the abilities of the different warbands I play against, then I'll do a video about that and we'll go really in depth and do a deep dive on it. But this Wildfighters is really interesting, and if you want to play solo, I think you're going to love this. So that's covered everything in the Tome of Champions 2020, and I would say if you've got the core book and this, then you've got lots to play with. You've got tons of narrative to explore, loads of different ways to play. And I would say to get this book, I'd recommend this one, certainly above Monsters and Mercenaries. And if you got the core set and not the Catacombs set, I would say look to this book, because I think the options it gives you are really good. So there we go, that's the Tome of Champions 2020, and that's going to now leave us with the Grand Alliance books. So let's take a look at those next. So here we are, we've got 4 books, one for each of the Grand Alliances, and I've done a separate video for each one. So we've got a deep dive review where we go through all the pages of each book. And so with these, you've got 2 smaller ones at 64 pages, the Bringers of Death and Harbingers of Destruction, and the 2 thicker ones, Sentinels of Order and Agents of Chaos, and these ones are a bit bigger at 112, so almost twice as much in there. But that's because these are bigger because you got more like factions, so you got more warbands in there than you would in these 2. So you're almost getting the same information in all these books, but you're going to get a lot more factions to choose from these two than you would with these two. Let's take the Sentinels of Order and we'll go through the contents there, and that's going to apply to all the books. So as we open it up, the contents page is going to be pretty much the same for all the books, all 4 of those books, except for when we start coming to the war bands, they're going to be different for each of the Grand Alliance. And with these books, we're going to get our rules updated, we're going to get monsters included, but specifically for each Grand Alliance. We're going to get some more allies, and again it's going to expand on the allies that we saw in Monsters and Mercenaries. And it's pretty much going to include all that information too, but it's now giving us something new called Heroes. And these are the books where heroes are coming into play. And so this is a really great part of the game where you can introduce heroes to your warbands. So now you could have more than one player in your warband that has the leader rune mark, and there can't be a leader for anything else except their abilities. But it does give you that opportunity to bring in some interesting characters and fighters to your game. These books have also really opened up all the Age of Sigmar models and miniatures to Warcry, and now rather than buying the card packs, you can look in here, and let's use Daughters of Cain as an example. You can now get all the fighter abilities and leader abilities and fighter type cards for all the different miniatures, or pretty much all the miniatures that are available for the Daughters of Cain and the ones that are suitable to play in Warcry, and you get their abilities. So now you don't have to buy the cards. And this is going to be the same for every faction, and some are going to be bigger than others. There's a really interesting section for Cities of Sigmar that I've recently done a video on in the Grand Alliance book for Order, the Sentinels of Order book. So this is a really interesting play on the Cities of Sigmar. So that's the main thing with these books. It's just opened up all the miniatures, and that's really exciting because it gives you so many options for gameplay. And with the hero rule that's been introduced, you can bring in heroes from different factions, and as long as they're from the same Grand Alliance, they can come and play in your warband. So again, really interesting and a great part of the game, and certainly these books are brilliant for that. So if you want to get access to all the cards and the abilities for all the different factions within one of the Grand Alliances, then these books are amazing, and I can highly recommend getting them. But of course, if you only play one Grand Alliance, you're only going to need one book, so that's really good too. But if you want to play one warband from each Grand Alliance, I think that's really fun, and so that's where having the books comes into play, because you can take a look at them in advance before you buy the models. You can pick and choose and decide which ones will suit your gameplay or which ones you're interested in, depending on their abilities. So that's a really great thing that these books are good for. And there's tons of narrative and background in here. We're getting background tables that are specific to this Grand Alliance. The same with fated quests and challenge battles. They're specific to each alliance too. So tons of information in there, tons of narrative, all kind of tailored towards each of the Grand Alliances, and it introduces heroes as well. So really great books, and it's up to you which one you would get. I've gone for all 4 because I want to collect everything, and I'm trying to build pretty much all the different warbands. So I really need these books, and it's going to save me trying to pick up the cards, because it looks like they stopped doing the cards, so they're going to be hard to get hold of soon as people buy them all up. So these books are going to be crucial if you want to start getting fighter cards for warbands that haven't been released specifically for Warcry. There we go, now we've gone through all 9 books, and so let's have a quick recap. And so definitely I would recommend the core book. You're going to need this if you want to play the game. It's got everything you need in there. You don't even need to get the battle plan cards because they're included in here, or most of them. So this core book is a must, and so if you're going to play Warcry, you're going to need this. I'd also recommend getting the Tome of Champions and the most up-to-date version, because then you're going to get some great narrative, campaigns and battles. You're going to get the information for the roaming beasts. You're also going to get the pit fights, the wild fighter with that AI kind of mechanics for solo play, and then you're also going to get loads of battles that are open to all the alliances. So I would definitely say those 2 are well worth your money, and you're going to get so much gameplay out of that. It's unreal. But if you want to move on from the Warcry specific warbands, so if you're looking to play something other than the ones you buy as a set with all the cards and abilities included, then you're going to need to pick one of the 4 Grand Alliance books. And again, if you just play one Grand Alliance, you're only going to need one of these books, because that's got the information specific to the fighters that you would choose. But if you want to play different warbands, perhaps one from each, then this is a good way to decide which warbands you're going to play. And there's some great reading in there, some great rules for the heroes and things, and monsters, so these are really fun too. So if it was me, if I was going to recommend what to get, I'd say definitely the core book and the Tome of Champions. I wouldn't worry about monsters and mercenaries. If you've got the core set and aren't interested in dungeon play, then you won't need Catacombs. And the 2019 Tome of Champions is really only worth getting if you want some extra campaigns and narrative and things like that to build upon what you'd get with the most up-to-date version. So I would definitely recommend going with the core book and the Tome of Champions 2020, and then depending on which Grand Alliance you like to play, I would choose one of these books. The Sentinels of Order is really great because it's got that section on the Cities of Sigmar, and it's also got a ton of fighters you can choose from all different factions. And I would definitely recommend getting one of these so that you can kind of see what they're all about, have a good read through, and then you can decide if you want to pick any of the others up too. So, you know, with just one book, the core book, you've got enough to play the game, but this is going to give you loads of ways to expand on that. Certainly play solo and play with some different monsters and things. And this is then going to give you access to heroes, different fighters you can choose, and just a whole new kind of wider gameplay. So 3 books out of the 9 would kind of really be all you'd need until you start expanding and going into the different warbands from the different Grand Alliances. It'd be great to hear what you think. How many books do you have? Which ones would you recommend people getting? Do you think this is a good choice to get started with? The core book, Tome of Champions, and then one of the Grand Alliance books? I'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts, so join in the comments section below. It'd be great to hear from you. I'll put links to all these in the description below so you can get that saving, and also there'll be the affiliate links. So it's a great way to support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel a different way, then please check out my Patreon page. It's an awesome place where we hang out on Discord, discuss the hobby, talk about Warcry, Underworlds, Curse City, and anything else that you want to discuss around the hobby. And we also help each other out, and you can get some content there that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I'll put the link for that in the description too. That'd be great to see you there. Thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.